Welcome to the Michigan Football Junkies. I'm Jeremy Miller, and we are going over today the preview for the UConn Michigan football game this Saturday. After last week against Hawaii, JJ left no doubt. So JJ was named starter for the season. Now, he still has to play well to keep it, but JJ's the starter. He has played phenomenally, and according to several around the team, started off fall camp. Cade was dominating the first couple weeks, and then the last half, that was all JJ. He really started to come on, so all he needed was that little bit extra time. Where would he be if he played in spring ball? Now, the whole Cade booing thing, can we get over that? Just because you're rooting for JJ doesn't mean you need to boo Cade. Cade McNamara is a member of this football team. He's a captain on this football team, and he's a great leader. Now, he may need to improve to be the starting quarterback at Michigan, but that still doesn't take it away. You certainly don't boo Donovan Edwards. Guess what? He's a backup too. Let's be better than that. Sorry, I just had to get that off my chest. It just gets very irritating knowing that you have a guy who he did everything he could last year to help this team get to where they were. And to see people boo him and to treat him the way they do, that's getting ridiculous. We need to end all this. He's still a member of the football team. He's still the captain, and he may be a backup, but you know what? That makes him one of the best backups in the country. And you need that. You need a guy to be able to step up in the event JJ goes down, because that certainly is a possibility. Done with that. The quarterback battle is over. It is JJ's job. He's won it fair and square, 100%. I've been calling for JJ to be the starter since the Georgia game. But that doesn't mean I was wishing any ill will towards Cade. On to our preview. Next we have up Matt from This Is UConn Country, and he has a website as well as a podcast. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep. You can
Welcome.
find me at
Thanks for coming on.
UConn on Twitter, and also UConn Sports Nation is a podcast that I will put up throughout the season.
Nice. Now, how long have you been doing this?
I've been in and around the program. I worked with the team for a little bit back in 2011. So I've been in and around the program. I was at school during the mid-2000s where UConn, I would say, performed the best between mid-2000s to like 2010. And then I worked with the team in 2011. And then I have been covering the team from a media perspective since 2014. Kind of do this on the side. I have a day job, but definitely having been around football, wanted to stick around football as much as I could, have visibility into things that are happening. It's my alma mater, so have definitely an affinity to the schools, the football program, and certainly want to kind of cover the team in a way that me as a fan, as somebody that's been involved with it, would want to see coverage, which I saw was lacking at the time back in 2014 within the state of Connecticut. So that's why I do what I do, and it definitely gives me some, like I said, some time around the football program when I can get it outside of my day job.
Nice. Well, jumping right into the actual team, we got, Jim Mora. He came over at the beginning of this season, and that's a big time hire, I think. I mean, you're talking about a former NFL coach. He's coached for UCLA. I know he's had some bumps along the road, but anytime you get a former NFL guy, that's a good hire, in my opinion.
Yeah, his arrival signaled to the fan base, to the school, to the state, really, because they've gotten really visibility in terms of supporting the state. I mean, the governor's been out to practices. He's been really vocal about supporting this football program and getting it back to where we expect it here at the university. So the Jim Mora hire was certainly the most high-profile coach that's been roaming the sidelines here at Stores. Brings instant credibility back to the program. It's not going to happen overnight by any stretch. But yeah, instant credibility, his experience, his football knowledge, what he's bringing to the table from a leadership perspective has been really spectacular in terms of the leadership that he's brought, the culture change that he's brought. It will take some time from a player perspective, but from the culture side, I think he's really turned a 180 with this program immediately with this hire over the summer.
He brought in Nick Charlton to run his offense, and that was a little. That I think that was almost out of left field for a lot of people, because not a lot of people knew who he was coming from Maine, but he was there for a little while as an offensive coordinator and then as a head coach. So I do like that he brought in a former head coach to add to leadership and kind of understand what his job is, because I think sometimes head coaches and coordinators can have a little beef, and I think that really helps, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's really helped having a guy that's had head coaching experience like Charlton has with the situation at defensive coordinator. So Lou Spanos, who was at UCLA with Mora as his defensive coordinator for a few years, ton of NFL experience, just like Mora. He stepped away from the program for personal reasons. Very late in camp, I think it was 2 weeks out from the season opener. So Mora's assumed the defensive coordinator role. He's the one calling the plays for the defense on the sidelines on game day. Having a guy that's been a head coach to help with the offense and really oversee the entire operation has certainly helped Mora in that capacity and allowed him to keep more focus on the defense than he otherwise would have liked to heading into this thing. So yeah, Charlton brings it's a pro spread offense. That's what Charlton likes to run. They utilize a lot of outside zone in terms of the run scheme. So yeah, Charlton brings I would say an offense that tries to get the players that are playmakers in position to be successful. So get the ball to guys in space. We'll talk about some key injuries that have happened on the offensive side of the football that's kind of limited what they're going to call from a play perspective, which we saw last night.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll get into that. But Charlton's definitely been a very good hire for this team. Last year, the offensive staff, I would say, struggled in terms of calling a game from the start to finish, making adjustments throughout. Having a guy like Charlton come in and assume that has done. I think it's helped the offense, even though they only put up 14 points last night.
But let's talk a little bit about those injuries, because one of those big injuries is obviously at quarterback. Your starting quarterback went down for the season.
Yeah, 10 plays into the season opener against Utah State, Penn State transfer Taquan Roberson went down with an ACL injury, and it's very unfortunate because we were talking earlier, but he assumed control of the offense as camp went on. He was here in the spring, got affiliated with Coach Charlton's offense that he was instilling, and Roberson seemed like the perfect player to run that style of offense. He had experience. He played at Iowa. I know last year at Penn State that didn't go so well, but he got his feet wet in Big Ten football on the road against a very tough defense against Iowa. So when he came in, they opened up the season on the road at Utah State. Very first drive of the game, drove them down for a touchdown, and he snuck it in and score of the game. And UConn really had a lot of confidence at that point in time. And Roberson, like I said, was in complete control at that point. And then second drive, I think it was the third play of the drive. QB keeper out to the right side. Tight end could have held a block a little longer, let him go, and that guy ends up getting Roberson from the side and taking out his knee. So it's very unfortunate because Roberson seemed to be coming along and only getting better under this offense and Charlton's leadership. He was a guy that was going to be able to lead this team, and he was only a sophomore, and he was going to be able to grow as a player. And now that he's got to recover from that injury, it's gonna take a while for him to be back.
That's too bad. And Zion Turner, obviously he's a true freshman, correct?
He is. He's a true freshman from St. Thomas Aquinas in Florida.
And there's been times he definitely shows some flashes of being a really good football player. But I also think like in your first game against Utah State, I thought he got robbed a couple times. There was definitely some pass interference penalties that probably should have been called that I think that Utah State got away with a little bit. And I think that, that game could have been closer and had a shot to win it towards the end if, maybe a few of those Not only those penalties, but also a few little mistakes where, the one was a first down. He just kind of stepped out of bounds, when he came down with it. So there's been a couple different times in that game where I was like, man, I really think you guys were close in maybe making that a tie game or really close to having a shot at winning it towards the end.
Yeah, and Turner, he was one of the most high profile recruits that UConn's ever had within the football program. He at St. Thomas Aquinas, he took over the starting role at that football program, which is very well known across the nation. It's one of the top high school programs in the country as a sophomore. And what he do? He led them to 3 state championships. He led them to a national championship, I believe, his sophomore year in high school. So he came in, like I said, very high profile recruit. Before Orgeron got fired at LSU, he had an offer from LSU. He had an offer at one point in time from Georgia. So he was a very sought after player. And he comes in with a lot of experience at a very high level of high school. So he was able to come in and compete in camp. So I mentioned Roberson really took control of the offense in camp. Turner was pushing him, and he really looked good right off the bat, even though he was a true freshman. So going against the caliber of players he went against in high school every single day, he wasn't phased coming to the college game. His very first practice, he was turning heads. Even the coaching staff was very pleased with what they saw from him. And with Roberson going down, it was very unfortunate. At the same time, it's an opportunity for Turner to step in, and he was deemed as really the future of this program. So he's getting his feet wet very, very early on. And what he brings to the table is like I said, a lot of playing experience. He has shown some growing pains a little bit in terms of his very first throw in college was a pick against Utah State. However, he bounced right back, and it's indicative of him. He really doesn't make the same mistake twice. His second throw against Utah State, touchdown. So he recovers nicely. He doesn't let things get to him like true freshmen usually do. He's a very mature individual. Just talking to him coming into a college program as a true freshman, he's a great football mind. He studies the game. It's very apparent that he's a special type of person and a special type of player that this UConn program hasn't had. So while they have struggled on the field with him as a starting quarterback for just 3 games, he did win his first start of his career at the college level against CCSU in week 2. He's a guy that this program's going to grow around, and there's going to be growing pains. The coaches are going to let the growing pains happen because it's only going to help him long term. So I think UConn's got something at the quarterback position as his career goes on.
Now, do you think that Nick Charlton is holding him back from running? Because he looks like he can move a little bit, but I haven't seen him really take off and run a lot. Or is he just more of a pocket passer and chooses to run when he has to, but he doesn't try and use it as a weapon?
He can get out and run. I wouldn't say he's a true dual threat quarterback because I don't think he has quite the wheels as Taquan Roberson did. There's a third quarterback on the roster, Cale Millen, who was a very high profile recruit coming out of high school, committed to Oregon right out of high school. His dad is Hugh Millen, former NFL quarterback. Hugh was actually Jim Mora's roommate in college at Washington. So there's a long story there. Mora's known Millen since he was born, really. And when Mora got married this offseason, Millen spoke at his wedding. So the two families are very, very close. That said, Millen is recovering from shoulder surgery. He transferred out of Oregon and went to Northern Arizona. He's starting to work his way back from a throwing motion perspective, but they do utilize Millen, and every now and then you'll probably see him for a few plays against Michigan this week. But they're committed to Zion Turner now and going forward at the quarterback position. I just wanted to mention Millen because you will see him a little bit. But yeah, Turner is more of a pocket passer who can get out of the pocket and scramble. However, I don't think he's this true dual threat that is going to have a lot of wheels and run 20 times a game.
Yeah, speaking of Millen, we actually played his brother in the first week against Colorado State.
Yep.
So your running backs, now I've seen Bruton, I've seen Carter. Carter seems more impressive to me, but I noticed Bruton, man, he's got some wheels. He seems to be like that guy that he can get out on like a wheel route. And like if he's got some hands, I could see him taking advantage of some linebackers, because he seemed like he's, like a 4-4 guy.
Yeah, he's a player that is a change of pace back. You see him a lot in special teams, had a kick return for a touchdown, opening kickoff against Clemson last season. Unfortunately with him, he went out last night and fractured his elbow and is likely out for an extended period of time. So that's
Oh,
unfortunate for UConn. Another injury issue. Also, while I'm on the injury topic, they're without their top two receivers as well for the season. It seems like so the injury bug has not just hit the quarterback position. Their second best running back, their top two wide receivers, who was going to be their third top wide receiver, has been dealing with a nagging hamstring injury. So offensively, they had a lot of weapons entering. Your starting quarterback's out, your top three wide receivers are out, and your second best running back is out. So that's really limited with the true freshman quarterback, the options that Charlton has had to utilize with this offense, which is why you've seen, from a play calling perspective, a little conservative, I would call it. I mean, last night against Syracuse, they did not throw the ball in the air further than 10 yards down the field the entire game, even though it was a 48-14 final. So that kind of speaks to lack of depth, I would say, at the wide receiver position in terms of being able to create separation off the snap, as well as I think I question a little bit the pass protection of this offensive line. Being you have a young quarterback, I think they're trying to protect him a little bit, and rather than waiting for plays to develop down the field, they're trying to go to this quick passing game, get the ball out of Turner's hands quick, avoid some hits because you're already thin at the quarterback position as well. So injuries abound on the offensive side of the football. So you did ask about running back. So Nate Carter he was entering yesterday the second leading rusher in the nation through 2 weeks. I think he had 312 yards or something like that. Very good back. UConn's had a lot of backs come through this program, say a decade ago with Donald Brown, Jordan Tomlin, and several others as well that saw time in the NFL. He's another one of these guys that power runner. However, he's also quick. I would say he's got a lot of balance. His cuts are very smooth and he's light on his feet. So he's a player that has a lot of speed and I think could be a starting running back in my opinion, having seen football, a lot of football. I think he could start at any program in the country. So I think UConn's very lucky to have Nate Carter as their running back. And again, he's a guy that as the season goes on and with the injuries you've seen, they're going to lean on very, very heavily in the rushing game as you go forward.
yeah, I really like the way Nate Carter was running the ball. He seemed like almost like a cross between like he has a little bit of a Kevin Jones feel to me, but he runs tougher than Kevin Jones did,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And yeah, even last night, he only had 74 yards in the game. But even against Syracuse, who has a big defensive front, they're much improved year over year than they were a season ago. He was bouncing off tackles. I think there were a couple plays where he broke 2 or 3 tackles. So he likes contact. He's not afraid of contact, even though he is a finesse runner at times. He's not afraid to, like I said, deliver contact. He'll bounce off tackles and he'll make guys miss as well. So yeah, in my opinion, he's one of the best all-around backs this program has had, and they've had some pretty good running backs if you think back a decade ago.
He impressed me just right off the rip. I saw him. He flashed to me just watching, and I haven't watched UConn like you have, but I did watch a couple games now, and he really flashed me. But another player that flashed to me was over at the wide receiver position. That's Aaron Turner, and he seems to be getting it done from like the screen pass. Which, like you said, you're trying to limit down the field throws, trying to protect Turner as much as you can. So he seems almost like a running back in a wide receiver body, almost like a Golden Tate type.
Yeah, he's a very similar body type to Tate, I would say. He is probably your best remaining healthy wide receiver at this point. Yesterday, he caught a 56-yard touchdown. However, it was a catch and run variety. So he's a guy that can get the ball in his hands, make people miss after the catch. And I think yesterday I had the stats in front of me: 68 yak yards, 71 yards total. So that speaks to how they're getting him the ball. Short passing game. You'll see crossing routes over the middle. You'll see quick screens, tunnel screens, maybe even on the jet once in a while with him. So yeah, he's a guy that you got to try to target. He had 6 targets yesterday, the most by far out of anyone in the passing game. So with the injuries that you've had, he's going to be your top target. I'm still waiting on another guy, a transfer that came in from Old Dominion, Nigel Fitzgerald, 6'4" receiver. He's a taller, more physical type receiver, somebody that UConn hasn't had in years past. I mentioned there's been a player nagging with a hamstring. He's the guy. Him and Roberson in camp had a very, very good connection. And it's just unfortunate that him and both Roberson have also been banged up because we thought those that cover the team, those two were going to be doing things in the passing game that UConn hasn't seen in quite some time. So they're going to need Fitzgerald to come back and get healthy if this offense is going to have any semblance of a passing game. That said, Turner's going to be your main target until Fitzgerald's healthy.
Now, is there any chance Fitzgerald's back for the Michigan game this week?
So Fitzgerald's been playing the last 2 weeks, but they've been utilizing him predominantly as a blocker. I mentioned he's a bigger physical guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think because of his hamstring, that's the way he's getting on the field at this point in time. They're not stretching him out yet down the field just to prevent re-aggravation, I would assume. I think against Michigan, you may try to see them take a couple shots with him down the field for sure.
Okay. Now, your offensive line, you said that's been a little spotty, there as far as pass protection. I have actually seen some really nice run blocking by them, some nice pulls and sealing off the edge, especially your tight end as well. And so I have seen some nice run blocking, but is it just a group that needs to gel better, or do you think they're going to kind of have some trouble moving forward this season?
Yeah, from a run blocking perspective, I think they've exceeded anybody's expectations outside of anybody in the program. They had high expectations inside, clearly, the coaches did, entering the season of what they were going to be able to do rushing the football. One thing that they do is they bring in a 6 lineman at times and set him up as, say, a tight end on either side of the line, just to give them an extra blocker. In this type of scheme, it really helps open up holes, like you mentioned. And that's been advantageous for a guy like Nate Carter to take advantage of. So I mentioned the outside zone scheme. That suits Carter in this line very, very well in terms of what they're able to do from a line standpoint, from a blocking standpoint, and it creates holes. So I wouldn't be surprised if Carter is able to rush the football a little bit against Michigan this week. However, consistently, that's gonna be a tough task against a very good Michigan defense. Even yesterday, Devonta Houston got a stretch play, took it 28 yards to the house. So he's another guy, kind of like a Bruton type, and Bruton's going to be out. So you're going to see a lot more of Devonta Houston from the running back spot. Same type of player, very fast. The kid's from Alabama, very tough player. Like I said, 28-yard touchdown run yesterday in Syracuse. UConn's first score of the game. So you're going to see him at kick returner as well. You'll see him and then a true freshman running back in the return game with Bruton now. So that's really been, like you mentioned, UConn's best weapon offensively is that stretch running game.
I think Bruton and Houston were actually pretty similar looking too, because when I saw that touchdown, I was like, oh, that's a nice place by Bruton. And they said Houston. I was like, oh, wait, hold on.
Yeah, that's something UConn had was entering the season was a lot of versatility at the running back position. So they had a lot of guys that fast, quick. And one thing I thought you were going to see more of so far this season was getting them involved in the pass game a little bit as well. So we'll see how that happens going forward. However, just looking at the stats from yesterday, we talked about Turner having 6 catches. The rest of the guys, I think Fitzgerald had 1, and then the rest of the guys were all running backs that had catches. So you are going to see more and more as the season progresses, especially since UConn's top couple of receivers went out, be targets in the passing game.
Now, tell me about your defense a little bit. Obviously, I really wanted to see what Lou Spanos was going to do this year. So it's too bad that he had to step away from the program, but you have to do what you have to do. But tell me a little bit about some of these players, because I've seen a few players that have kind of flashed to me, like a Chris Sheeran, but you're obviously the expert on UConn football. Tell me a little bit about the defense and what some of these guys will be able to do on Saturday.
Yeah, it starts with Jackson Mitchell at linebacker in the middle. He had 120 tackles last season. He had 16 yesterday against Syracuse, 16 in the season opener at Utah State. He entered yesterday as the nation's leading tackler, I think, with 16 more. He's going to maintain that entering next week against Michigan. So he's a player, just a junior, that has really benefited from Coach Mora coming in. So Mora is somebody that's worked with defense his entire football career. That's where he started in the NFL. He was defense coordinator with the Niners. worked with a lot of high-profile linebackers, both there as well as at UCLA. And Mitchell's another guy that Mora talks about in line with several guys that he's coached in terms of how he approaches the game, his preparation, um, with guys that he's coached that have made the Hall of Fame. So if Jim Moore is talking about a bit like that about a guy, I think people should take notice. And Jackson Mitchell, for his on-field performance thus far this season, has improved even from where he was a season ago. So that's the first thing you should talk about when you're talking about this UConn defense. And then you've had a lot of transfers that have come in and helped. Now, that said, they didn't perform well yesterday as a unit. However, you mentioned Chris Sheeran was a transfer from Missouri. Brandon Boyer Randall began his career at Michigan State, transferred to Texas Tech, and is now here at linebacker at UConn. Marquez Bembry, who had either a sack and a half or 2 sacks yesterday, came in from Kentucky. So you've had a lot of P5 transfers come into this unit defensively. Linebacker core, front seven, I would say is your strength of this unit. Secondary has been a question to me, and it was a question entering the season. Unfortunately, UConn tried to start out in man a lot against Utah State. In key situations, they got called for a PI and then gave up a couple short touchdown passes. Yesterday, they tried a lot of zone, and Syracuse was able to find the open spots in that zone yesterday at will, really. So I'm interested to see how Mora sets up the secondary against Michigan. One-on-one, your receiver is going to be able to get well down the field. If you're zone, I think McCarthy, is who Harbaugh mentioned as a starting quarterback going forward. Is going to be able to find spots and open spots in the zone. So overall, from a player perspective, Jackson Mitchell is who you should look at. Linebacker, I would say, is the strength of the unit. The entire front seven, I would say, is pretty decent against the run. So I would expect Michigan to, I don't want to say struggle against the run, but maybe get slowed down a bit. The passing game is where Michigan is really going to excel this coming week.
Now, I did see Jackson Mitchell pick off a pass earlier this season. How is he in pass coverage? And better yet, how is the linebacker core in pass coverage? Because we do like to run a lot of little dump offs to tight ends and some crossing route. You know, we'll pitch it to Edwards and Corum both on the out in the flat. How are they in pass coverage?
Yeah, I would say your two best linebackers in pass coverage are probably Swenson and Mitchell. Boyer Randall can also move a little bit in the pass game. But Swenson and Mitchell are two guys that sideline to sideline they can track things down and stay with if it's tight end. Obviously, if it's a slot guy, it's going to be tougher for them to stick with guys. But Ian Swenson is a guy that I would say is your best pass coverage linebacker. He came in as a safety, I believe, coming out of high school. Had some offers from like Louisville and several others. So he's been a player that's been here for a very, very long time. I think he's a 6-year player now. And right next to Jackson Mitchell, they've really gotten better and better as their careers have gone on. So I wouldn't say it's the strength of the linebackers. However, those two are the best ones that can cover in the pass game.
Nice. Well, just by looking at the little bit of film that I have, I can tell that obviously Zion Turner is an up and coming guy. Nathan Carter, obviously, I think Aaron Turner is as well. So, and then Jackson Mitchell, like you mentioned, is kind of the main guy on your defense. So you guys have a team that's up and coming with, I think, a really, really good coaching staff. And if they can just get, obviously defense coordinator back, just keep it rolling, get a little bit more recruiting, have some nice NIL deals, I could see UConn being an up and coming team moving forward.
You can see this program is on an uptick, and Mora has an end goal, like I mentioned, of getting into the ACC eventually. It's going to be a long journey. However, I think even throughout camp and recruiting and what they've done in the transfer portal and just the publicity within the state of Connecticut to re-energize the fan base, it's step one in a 10-step journey of getting to where you want to be. But talking about the end goal is better than hoping and dreaming and not talking about it. So set a goal in sight. I think Mora here, from a leadership perspective, is on the right trajectory. They're going to struggle this week mightily against Michigan. I don't think it's any question about that. But just having these opportunities and ultimately having a plan in place is going to do wonders as this program thinks about the future.
Okay. Well, let's get your game prediction as we wrap this up. And what is going to be your prediction on the score this weekend?
Yeah, well, coming off a Syracuse game where it was 48-14 and seeing what UConn did offensively, which was not much, I think a similar score to what you saw against Hawaii is in order. I wouldn't be shocked if Michigan is able to get in the high 50s. UConn probably a score or two. Anything better than that, I think would be a win in the fans' eyes. I don't know what the line is going to come out as, but it's going to be a very tough day in the office for the UConn football program. However, I think it's going to be a learning experience for them. It's going to they have goals above and beyond what anyone expects this program can be, and seeing firsthand what a school like Michigan and what their program looks like under Jim Harbaugh is going to help them in terms of their journey that they're on. Like I mentioned, I'm making the trip out to Ann Arbor this week, so it'll be my second time there. I was out there when they opened up the season. I think it was 2010. So yeah, it's going to be a great experience, and definitely taking in the big house is going to be a good opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you enjoy the game. We'll hope for the best play out of both teams, and hope for as mainly for you, no more injuries. No more injuries. Everybody comes out healthy.
I think the coaching staff would agree.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us where we can find you, as well as again, on Twitter, as well as your podcast and website.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at UConnSN, and then this is UConnCountry.com is where you can find all my content, links to videos, links to podcasts, etc. So, like I said, at UConnSN, and then this is UConnCountry.com.
Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate all the info that you gave us, so everybody knows what we have coming into the big house. So, and I hope you enjoy the game as well.
All right, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Have a great one.
It's great to be a Michigan Wolverine.